Story time of how my mom kicked me out at age 15 because she found out I was dating a mixed boy. So basically, my mom wasn't strict at all, and she let me do almost anything that I wanted. But when it came to dating, it was a whole different story. I mean, she let me start dating at 12 years old, but every single time I told her I had a boyfriend, the first thing that she would say is, he better be white. And she'd always say, if it ain't white, it ain't right. Mind you, my preference was mixed and dark-skinned boys. So of course, I'm going to go after to what I'm attracted to. And at 14, I started dating this kid, and I asked my mom if I could invite my boyfriend to my birthday. We weren't really doing anything big. It was kind of just like a family party with a couple friends. And she said yes. Mind you, she had never met him or seen a picture of him, so she was kind of excited to meet him. So my birthday comes around, and he gets there. And as soon as he walked into the door, I gave him a big hug, and my mom turned around and gave me the most evil look ever. She pulled me aside, and her exact words were, "Is this a joke?" And she literally said, "I trusted you enough to not bring this kind of hood in our house." I'm running out of time for this part 2. Part 2 of how my mom kicked me out at age 15 because she found out I was dating a mixed boy. Continuing with the story, after the party, I had asked him to stay for like an hour or two later. And afterwards, my mom was just being completely rude the entire time towards him. And right in front of him, she screamed at me and said, "I don't want this type of black trash in my house. Please get it out." Mind you, I hate disrespecting my mom, and I never talked back to her. But I yelled back at her and said that was the most disrespectful thing she could have ever said. And while all this is happening, he looks like he's about to bust into tears. Like, I genuinely know this kid had a soft spot for me. So I apologize, and I tell him I think it's best for him to leave. And afterwards, he FaceTimes me, and he tells me that he will do anything to be able to keep me. And after he leaves, my mom tells me that I'm a big disgrace to the family, and she doesn't want me living there no more. All over me bringing a mixed guy to the house. I'm now 19, and I'm still with him. And I really haven't talked to my mom since. But that day, she kicked me out, and I had to go stay with his family. She still wants nothing to do with me because I'm still with a mixed guy. Mom, if you're listening to this, you're a racist piece.
Story time of how I found out that my mom was actually my older sister. My older sister never really liked me as a child. We were never close. I never knew why, but I was guessing it was because of the 10-year age gap. But I'm pretty sure she hated me because she couldn't even look me in the eye. I cannot make this up. She would not look me in the eye. But she never really talked to my parents either. She kind of just kept to herself all the time. Sometimes I have vivid memories of when we were younger and she would always be arguing with my parents about something, and I always thought it had something to do with me. Well, I was right. It had everything to do with me because eventually my sister turned 18 and she moved out. For 2 years, I didn't talk to her at all. I honestly don't even think I had her number saved, and I'm pretty sure that she didn't have mine. Well, 2 years later, and I was 10 at the time, she reached out to me via social media. I'm not sure how she found my Instagram name, but it was just my name, so she probably just typed that in and found me. She DM'd me and told me that she wanted to talk about something very important and that she would like to talk over the phone. So we exchanged numbers and we called that same night. And she told me that when she was younger, my dad had taken advantage of her and gotten her pregnant and had me. This is part 2 of how I found out that my mom was actually my older sister. So like I said, my older sister had reached out to me via social media and told me that she was actually my mother. And so after we got off the phone that same night, I lost it at dinner and I went off on my parents and I screamed at them. And I told them that I would go to the police and tell them everything, and I would tell them the truth unless they just let me live with my older sister. And they tried to explain themselves, and their reasoning was that they wanted to keep the family together because of their traditional values, and it would have just made their lives a lot harder going through all the court proceedings, so they just kept the family together. And so they clearly didn't want me to go into the police, so they said that I could go live with my older sister. So she came to get me, but she lived in a different state, so it kind of took a while. I still had to stay in the house for like a week or so before she came, but I packed all my stuff and I was ready to go. And when we went back to where she lived, we immediately called the police and told them everything. Fast forward a little bit, they did some DNA testing. My sister's DNA matched as my biological mother's, and then my dad was my biological father, and they saw how the ages just didn't match properly, so they took my father to jail.
This is why waking up late might just save your life. One day when I was in elementary school, my mom and I both overslept, which meant I wouldn't be ready in time to get on the bus. School started at 8, my bus pickup time was at 7, and it was already 6:40 or something. I was still in my PJs and hadn't even had breakfast yet. My mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. It's 6:50, I'm in my PJs eating breakfast, and that's when we hear the bus pull up 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closed the door and came back inside, but the bus didn't pull away. There's a knock at the door, and my mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains he's a substitute bus driver because the regular driver called in sick, and that he's early because he wanted to get an early start on the route. My mom says she's taking me to school because we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says he can wait a few minutes since he's already ahead of schedule. My mom says that we won't be ready in a few minutes and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed really angry about this, but turned around, got back on the bus, and left. But at 7 a.m., another bus pulls up to my house. My mom went out to talk to them and came back looking terrified. Part 2 of why sleeping in might just save your life. After talking to the bus driver, my mom came back looking terrified, but she didn't say anything about it and told me to finish getting ready for school. At the time, I didn't know what happened, but my mom would end up telling me a few years later. When she went to the second bus, she found out it was being driven by my regular driver and it was full of other kids that are usually on my route. By the way, the other bus was empty. My mom asked the driver about the substitute driver and about him calling in sick. He tells her that he never called in sick and there is no substitute driver on his route. The driver immediately called dispatch in a panic and told my mom to go inside and call the police and report this incident, which she did without me knowing at the time. There was absolutely no one doing my driver's route that day. Whoever this was most likely a kidnapper who had targeted me. I never heard anything about it again, not even if someone else had ended up being picked up by this mysterious fake bus driver. But chances are, had I gotten on that bus, I would never have made it to school or back home. And if we hadn't overslept on that specific day, I would have been on that bus.
I was engaged to the love of my life, but my sister met up with me and begged me to break it off. She said I had to leave him because they were in love, and he was just too afraid to break up with me because he didn't want to hurt me or my family. When I confronted my fiancé about my stepsister's accusations, he straight up denied it. He said she's been trying to come on to him for some time and he never mentioned it because he didn't want to ruin our relationship. He begged me not to believe her, and so we continue how we were. My stepsister grew resentful and made nasty comments about how I was forcing a man who didn't even love me to marry me because I had low self-esteem. A month later, I get a text from my sister. It's a video of her and my fiancé sleeping together in my bed, and multiple screenshots of him telling her he loved her, how he wished she was the girl he was marrying, and how he hated that I wouldn't let them be together. I was devastated and angry, but decided to move in silence. I went home, grabbed all my stuff, removed all my money from my joint account, and moved in with my dad. After that, I sent all the screenshots to my family and his. He tried getting back with me multiple times, but I ended up blocking him when I found out he proposed to my sister with the same ring he gave me. I left it behind. Now they're getting married. I was extremely hurt to find out that my mom, step-siblings, and stepdad were attending the wedding. When I tried to express my feelings, they dismissed me and said it wasn't their fault that I got in the way of true love and made me out to be some sort of vindictive Disney villain. So I cut contact with them and I barely spoke to my mom in 5 years. Fast forward and I get engaged to my now husband. Due to COVID, we had a small ceremony and I also fell pregnant. My dad and stepmom have been amazing throughout all of this. She knitted a pair of booties and posted them on Facebook and tagged me about how she's excited for her grandbaby. My mom didn't know I was pregnant. Shortly after, I received a phone call to confirm. Since then, she's invited me and my husband over to her house multiple times. I've declined every single time for the obvious reason. My ex-fiancé and stepsister live there. The next time my mom called, I told her I didn't want them to keep inviting me over when they knew I would be forced to see my stepsister. I'm still hurt over what they did to me, and I told her I wasn't sure if I wanted people like them in my child's life. My mom was crying hysterically and kept saying I was being cruel and I couldn't deprive her of her first grandchild. She kept wailing about how I might be the only person in our family to even give her grandchildren. Am I wrong for trying to keep my mom out of my child's life?
Story time about how I got arrested for stalking my celebrity crush. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. When I was 15, I saw my celebrity crush for the first time in a movie. After that, I pretty much went to all of his movie premieres and events. I was able to take a picture with him and even got his signature. To say that I was obsessed was an understatement. Now, here's where the problem began. He started dating this woman, aka another celebrity, and I pretty much lost it after that. At the time, I was living with my mother and she couldn't help but notice the change in me. I started staying out pretty late, mostly because I was out in the city looking for him. I knew all of his hangout spots because the paparazzi always caught him there. So I basically would hang out everywhere he would. I followed him to his house, I followed him to the gym, and I followed him to the grocery store, pretty much everywhere. I decided to sign up to his gym, and I started talking to him, and he started talking to me, and he asked me out on a date. Part 2 is up. After stalking him for a while, my celebrity crush asked me out on a date. But he didn't know I was stalking him, of course. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. On the date, he pretty much only talked about himself. He told me he had just broken up with his ex, which I knew that. And I basically pretended not to know anything about him. There was lots of awkward silence and I just couldn't help but stare at him the whole time. That's when he asked for the check and paid for dinner. I was totally expecting him to ask me to go back to his place. Well, when he didn't, I was really disappointed. So I did the logical thing, I invited myself over. That's when he told me that he couldn't because he had to get up early. After that, I didn't hear back from him at all. So I decided to go to the gym where I knew he was gonna be. But when I tried to say hello to him, he told me to stay away. Then he asked one of the gym employees to escort me out. And when I got home, the cops were waiting for me to arrest me. They showed me pictures of me stalking my celebrity crush. Part 3 is up. As soon as I got home, the cops were there and they arrested me. And they showed me pictures of me stalking my celebrity crush. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. Since they had all this evidence and my face on the pictures, I couldn't say it wasn't me. They told me that after our date, my celebrity crush got a really bad feeling from me. So he decided to install cameras around his house and in his car. And well, that's when he caught me stalking him around his house at odd hours and following him in my car all the time. I was taken to court and told I had to go to therapy. Apparently, he felt bad for me though and didn't want to press charges. He did get a restraining order, so I definitely can't go near him. The good news is that I have another celebrity crush. Yay!
When I was younger, there was a girl I knew who lived in our neighborhood. None of the kids liked her because they claimed that she stank and acted weird. When they talked about her, I kind of felt bad, so I became friends with her. Yeah, of course, I got the, why do you hang out with her? But she really wasn't all that bad. But her scent, they were kind of right about that. One day, she invited me over to her house, and she was very excited because she told me I was the first person to ever come over. And I felt so honored, so I went. But when I went into her house, it smelled very bad, almost nauseating, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be rude. She had a lot of uncles that lived with her family. Honestly, it was like 4 to 5 families in one house, to be honest. But she first introduced me to her stepmom. I said hi to her, but she just stared at me in disgust. Then we went to her room to play. As it got later, I told her I needed to go home. But she begged me to stay longer because she was scared. I told her I'd come tomorrow, and she just starts crying. She runs into her bed and falls into her sheets, which lifted her skirt. There were bruises all over her thighs. Let me know if y'all want a part 2. Part 2 about the girl I know who lived in my neighborhood. So it's late and it's time for me to go home. She said she was scared and starts crying. Then she runs into her bed and flops into her sheets. Her skirt lifted and there were bruises all around her thighs. I asked her what happened. She looks down and quickly pulls her skirt over her bruises. I asked, did someone do that to you? And she says she can't tell me. I asked why. She responds, if I do, they're going to hurt me. So I ran downstairs to her stepmom and told her what I saw. She sits and laughs in my face. I was so confused and asked her, are you gonna help her? And she tells me that little hoe can help herself and that I actually should be going home. So I went into the living room where her uncles were and told them. One of them had said, that's why that girl don't need to be bringing random folks into the house, and runs upstairs to her room. One of the other uncles asks, you want to get popped? I shook my head in fear and said no. And he yells at me, telling me to go home. From there, I ran home and never came back. And after that day, she never came back outside. It's been 7 years. To this day, I wonder what happened to her.
If anyone's wanting to know how to get revenge on someone who spread rumors about you, listen to this story and it may come in handy. So I had a friend that we can call Miranda who was obsessed with me. I was genuinely friends with her, but she would never give me a break. I could not get a breather from her at any point in time. Everywhere I went, she went. And Miss Girl would actually get so upset with me anytime I would go over to another friend's house. I knew she was really insecure and just trying to get attention, so I tried to be patient with her. However, one day I just could not take it anymore. I got into a massive fight with her over how overprotective she is. I literally said, you are a stage 5 clinger. And in response, this girl ended up joining my basketball and softball team, which I've been on for forever. She told her mom that I was bullying her, which was a complete lie, but then her mom went to the coaches. She got me kicked off the team and then continued to spread rumors about me. I ended up losing my best friends and even my boyfriend over the rumors that she spread about me. So that's when I decided to get revenge. So I decided that I was going to send her over an apology gift with makeup in it, which was a mix of drugstore items and poison ivy. So I got revenge on my obsessive best friend for spreading rumors about me. So I put together an apology gift for her for bullying her, even though I did not. The gift that I put together was some makeup I got from Walgreens, but I decided to add some poison ivy to the eyeshadow so that she would get a rash. I then set up a hidden camera and watched as she put it on. And as expected, the rash started to form. After she noticed, I started to tell her off and accuse her of all the stuff she did to me. And she was so pissed that I managed to get a confession out of her. She was very much just like, yeah, I did that. Literally over me not wanting to spend every waking second with her. And the best part of it is that she threatened me on camera. So I cut out the part about the poison makeup and told her if she didn't tell my friends, coaches, and significant other what she was doing, I would send the video to everyone. So she admitted to all of her crimes and I got back on the team. I got my friends back and my boyfriend apologized. I ended up totally fine and she ended up losing credibility with basically everyone. If any of you guys have a story you'd like me to share on my TikTok, follow my Instagram and I'll show you how.
This is a story of the time that I caught my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So I don't know about you guys, but every single Wednesday in my middle school, we would have a bagel sale. And some people's parents would come in to help out. And my neighbor's mom was one of those parents. And I had a best friend at the time whose mom would also work at the bagel sales. But this best friend of mine, her mom never let us hang out with each other because she felt that I was a bad influence on her. When in reality, it was the complete opposite. She was the one that snuck the boys in her house, if you guys remember that story time, where they peed in a flower pot. So basically her mom wouldn't let us hang out. And sometimes my friend would go with her mom in the morning, basically as a ride to school, and to help out with the bagels too. And one day when she went in with her mom, my neighbor's mom also was there too. So my friend starts eavesdropping into their conversation, and my friend's mom brings me up and says how much of a bad kid I am and a bad influence. And my neighbor's mom was like, "Oh wow, that's my neighbor. Like, we always suspected something bad about her. Our whole entire neighborhood knows this about her." Basically making stuff up about me. So then I go home crying, tell my mom. Part 2 of catching my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So my best friend tells me all these things that my neighbor was saying about me, obviously. And I got really upset, so I went home and I just started to cry. Because for some reason I felt like when I was younger, every one of my friends' parents hated me. And I never really knew why. I was always the type of person to let my friends do whatever they want and encourage them in doing whatever they want, whether that's breaking the rules or following the rules. So I mean, I guess that could be something, but I'm just being a supportive friend, sorry, I got off topic. So when I told my mom, she was like, "Okay, come with me, I'm gonna knock on her door." And I was like, "Heck no, I do not feel like dealing with this. Mom, you deal with it." So she calls her up on the phone, puts her on speakerphone, confronts her about the situation, and this lady starts going on about how she loves me like I'm her own child, saying that I was never a bad influence on her daughter, and that she actually wanted me to hang out with her daughter more. That's not what she was saying at Bagel Sale.
Story time about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My best friend and I had known each other for almost 7 years. We met in college and she was always dating around and had several boyfriends. I had no boyfriends because my parents were super strict even though I was in college. There was only one boy that I really liked, but like I said, my parents were super strict so I could never date anyone. What's worse is that I know this boy had a crush on me too. Fast forward 5 years later, my best friend and I are living together. She's on Tinder, Bumble, and all these other dating apps. She had been going on several dates because she really wanted to find a relationship. Well, one day she comes home and she says that she really liked this guy she went on a date with. They ended up dating a month before I even met him. One day she invites him over because she wanted me to meet him. He comes in and as soon as we lock eyes, I'm in shock. It's the boy that I had a crush on in college. Which, like I said, I knew he had a crush on me too. We hugged and chatted for the entire night. And I could tell my best friend really liked him. A few days later, he starts following me on Instagram and we start DMing. He tells me that he had a crush on me in college and I tell him that I did too. Part 2 is up. My best friend's boyfriend starts DMing me on Instagram. He confesses that he had a crush on me when we were in college together, and I told him that I did too. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. From that day on, he would DM me every single day and we would just flirt back and forth. I started feeling really guilty and I told him one day I can't do this anymore. That's when he told me he also felt guilty and that the best thing was for us to stop talking, so we did. I was so sad. A few weeks passed by and my best friend asked me if she could have the apartment all to herself because she's planning a romantic dinner for him. I said yes, but I felt so jealous. I left the apartment because I realized that I was so in love with him. I went to the supermarket and ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies and went to the movies. I get a text message from my best friend asking me to come home immediately. My stomach sank and I thought she had found out. When I get there, she's crying and she says that he broke up with her. I asked if he said why and she said because he was in love with another woman. My stomach sank again. I was there with her the entire night while she cried knowing her boyfriend left her because of me. Part 3 is up. My best friend's boyfriend had broken up with her because of me. I didn't have the heart to tell her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. A few days later, she started going out on Tinder dates again. I could see that she was feeling better, so I decided to confess to her everything. And she told me she could tell that he and I liked each other. Then she told me I should date him. Well, I didn't waste any time. I sent him a text message and asked him if he wanted to meet up for dinner. And when we did, he asked me to be his girlfriend. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. He even got my name tattooed on his neck. The only problem is that my mom thinks he might do the same thing to me. I don't even want to think about that because I truly believe that he loves me. But let's hope not. I've been planning the wedding and I asked my best friend to come. Of course she said yes. She's super happy for me. And she actually has a boyfriend now. Do you guys think my fiance will end up doing the same thing to me?
My daughter Savannah is the CEO of faking illness to get out of school. So when she does not feel like being there, she will go to the nurse's office and complain to them that she is really not feeling good so that they call me and I have to go get her. Well, one day after this happens, I walk into the administrative office and everybody is really concerned because Savannah is sitting in a chair so dramatically hi, Mom. And when I saw her, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And everybody looked at me like I was some really bad mom. Oh my God, why aren't you more concerned? But as we were walking out, she was walking really slow and actually didn't look good. So even I was a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Until we got to the car when Savannah looks at me and goes, you know what, Mom? I feel better now. And I was like, Savannah, are you serious? And she's like, Mom, do you maybe want to go to Starbucks and have a girl's day? And I was like, honey, what kind of question is that? You know I do.